welcome you, Master Cancelliere, for coming today. I appreciate it as a ITF America board member and owner of your own school for your entire life. I appreciate you coming online here to talk to Master Fruitstone and myself about ITF Taekwondo in the United States. So we'll
thank you. Certainly my pleasure to be here. Gentlemen that I know for a very long time, well-respected masters and coaches and umpires that have dedicated unselfishly to Taekwondo and for ITF in the United States. I do appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Master Young, we're okay.
We're okay. We're okay. We're okay. Yeah, I've always felt so happy that I've been able to talk. I mean, some people maybe even feel like they can't talk to some of the higher ranked people just because they feel like, oh, those people up there. I mean, I've even gotten it from like Dr. Shurchkov, her being a 6th degree, and she says, she's like, oh, very, very much about that the martial art philosophy and idea that you have to. But all these folks that are leaders of ITF America are people that I've always felt like I had a great friendship with. So
sometimes people forget that we're all people.
Yeah,
we're just people.
Absolutely.
I think that we've known each other for so long that we've known each other when we were 1st and 2nd dans, and it's just that, so we still see each other as
peers. Yeah.
But I think the important thing is that the board, the senior ranks, people on committees make themselves accessible. I think it's I don't know if we'll get to that point, but it's important that we show up to events, we show up to activities, and the ones that are active are accessible to the members. Maybe they may feel shy to come up to talk to them, but things like this will make them feel comfortable.
Hopefully.
Yes, sir.
All right, Master. Hit away.
All right, so I'm gonna open it up, and I have it's a few part question, sir, so you can kind of answer in parts, no problem. But first question is if you can tell us a little bit about how you got started in martial arts, and you come from a martial arts family, so we'd certainly like to know what that was like. And did you always enjoy training, and what was this like? This certainly the early journey for you. Obviously, as you grow, we tend to love it more, but to just tell us basically your experience.
So I started Taekwondo probably 1980. I was quiet, shy, not very aggressive, lazy. And my father had grown up in a really rough neighborhood in Buenos Aires as a redhead with 3 redheaded brothers, always getting in fights. My father was the middle brother, and we always say my oldest uncle, rest in peace, was the trouble. He was the troublemaker. My father was the deal maker, and my youngest uncle was the pretty boy. So my father was always getting called for fights, even until the day after he was married. So at some point he wanted to learn how to defend himself. So he got involved in, he did some wrestling, some boxing in Argentina when he was younger, and then in this 1972 he immigrated to the United States. And as immigrants, he started working for years, but finally got involved in Taekwondo officially, and we started in the WTF Dojang in Lansdale, Pennsylvania, which was a Master Bong Pil Yang WTF. So we started training together because he wanted to, he liked the discipline. He hated the fact that there was no structure when he grew up. And he wanted more. He wanted that discipline. He loved it. And he got me involved and my sister. I did not like Taekwondo when I was little. I would have rather stay home watching the Flyers as a kid and not training. But, there was only so many fake stomach aches you could pull off on him until eventually it's like, you're going because you really aren't sick. And once I got there, I realized, it wasn't that bad. It's like most kids in the dojo, getting them out of their routine, getting them out of the house, playing with their friends. And that's how I started. I started in WTF Taekwondo. I won my first tournament when I was a green stripe. Terrified out of my mind. I remember the trophy back then was bigger than I was. My dad said, he said, if you win first place, I'll buy you something. I'll buy you a present. I didn't care about the trophy. And and that's how we started. Myself, my father, then my sister, and then later on my mother. My mother joined once we moved back to Argentina in the early 80s. She started Taekwondo, but as an ITF. So the three of us started WTF here in the United States. And after about 10 years, my father decided that he missed Argentina. He wanted to move back. So we went once in 1981 for like a month to kind of feel it out. And then he decided that in 82, we were going to pack up and leave. We were already, him and I were both first-degree black belts already. And he went over there, and that's when we made contact with our instructor, our WTF instructor here, put us in contact with the WTF instructor in Argentina, which I never heard of. As a kid, I never heard of a Korean speaking Spanish. And I always remember, I was like, you're not Argentine, you're Korean, how you speak? And that was my first impression. Long story short, it didn't work out with that WTF, and then we ended up stumbling into Grandmaster Marano's dojang in Liniers, Argentina, and we did the switch there from WTF to ITF, which was because we were very linear, very stiff. I think we were still doing the tagugs.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't think we had even switched to the Punse yet. And I remember training, and by that time I was almost 13, 14 years old. Training with Grandmaster Marano and a lot of the senior masters of Argentina that are still there now, as a 14 or 15-year-old, and him smashing my shoulders like, relax, relax.
Right.
And you were soaking wet, and he took no pity. The more you could do, the more he expected from you. But that's our transition into Taekwondo, and my father loved the discipline. He never missed class. I remember many days when we would drive from the half hour in Pennsylvania, he would forget his pattern, and he would stop midway in a gas station, go over the pattern, because there was no internet, there was no books there. And then just so he wouldn't forget it by the time he got home. I could learn a pattern pretty quickly, so that always worked out. If he forgot a movement, he would rely on me to remember it and then reteach it to him. And I guess that's where my love for patterns came along, because it came relatively easy to remember the movements. Like I said, we moved to Argentina. We started training with Grandmaster Marano, and then we opened our first dojang in Palomar, Buenos Aires, with a little second-story room, probably 15 by 15. We started teaching, and right away we had 50, 60 students.
Wow.
Yeah, he was. My father was very good. He had something other than just the Taekwondo part that people liked. His mannerisms. He was very disciplined. He was strict. He was very. He was very stubborn as well. It was his way or no way. And for whatever reason, a lot of students gravitated to that type of leadership. So we built the dojang right away in Argentina, but I think we were there about 10 months. I had already done my freshman year in high school here. My sister and I, we were already kind of Americanized. And, we pushed back enough that, he said, okay, if you guys aren't happy there, we're going to move back. So less than a year, I think, that we opened the dojang. He sold that dojang over to another master from Argentina, he was a 5th degree at the time, or 3rd degree, Sabun Torres. He took over the dojang, and we moved back to Pennsylvania, to Philadelphia. That's where we established the United States Taekwondo Center back in October 18, 1983. And that's where this year we're actually celebrating our 40th year.
Yes, sir. I saw that.
Yeah. So Taekwondo for us, our family we all went. We all trained together, and there was no taking days off. We only trained in Argentina Tuesdays and Thursdays because we taught Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So early on, my schedule was teaching, helping teach, and the other days were training. And then on Saturdays we went to tournaments. So it was 5-6 days a week of Taekwondo. So I didn't play sports when I was younger because there was no time for it. And my father was not a sports fan. So he didn't play soccer. He didn't care for it. He didn't watch it or any other sports. And it was only Taekwondo.
Yeah, well, that's great. All of us have different experiences about how we get involved and what inspires you to get involved. And in your case, it's almost like there was no other option. You were going to be involved, and so you've ended up being a owner of a family dojo. I call them that because that's what it is. There's a family of people that surround you, and all the families of students and everybody. It's this huge thing. But that does get me to my question. And I know that you have spent, since you've spent your entire life training in Taekwondo, you've spent your entire life doing patterns. Patterns are part of our 5 physical aspects of the physical composition of Taekwondo. They're not everything, but they are a big chunk. And I remember seeing a picture of you. I would want to say it was a World Championships in Argentina, where you're standing there and there's like a scoreboard or something. And I don't remember what you ended up, if you were the world champion or it was the final round or what the situation was. And I don't know if it was a world championship, but I think it was Argentina. Do you remember the photo I'm talking about? You're on the floor and it's like the back of you looking up and you see your name on.
So there were, I think there are 2. There's one where it was in St. Petersburg in Russia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think that was, but it had the names of the other first, second, thirds. That's when I think that was the first time I placed in 1997. But then there's another picture. I think the one that you're referring to was in 1998. We went to an open ITF World Championship. That was hosted by the TAGP, and there they
England.
Yeah, I think the screen was I had patterns division, which they only did one group, like first degree. Everybody was together, and I remember because there was 3 rings of 100 people each, and they said, okay, the top 2 from each ring go to the next round, and I think it was based on scores. And I remember because I was in that one of the rings with Master Cancelliere from Argentina because they were there. Huge tournament. They had like 15 or 1,800 competitors. Like their patterns were okay because they had been out of the ITF since I think their falling out had come in with Ricky Haas Scotland World Championship in '84. And then they had broken up into this huge UK group. But their sparring was good. Their sparring was phenomenal, and their events were huge and well run. But I think that picture was after I had won. They said, "Okay, come back the next night and do show the pattern." And I think that's where that screen was from.
Right on. Well,
cool. Yeah, it was very nice.
The question has to do with the practice of pattern as it relates to Taekwondo and self-defense. I have to admit, I don't want to be a blasphemer, but I have to admit that the hours and hours of time that I've spent in the minutia of pattern detail and the I will call them modifications or upgrades over the course of the last 20 years, it's a lot of time, a lot of energy. I'm wondering about your thoughts about it, pattern practice as it applies to martial art training. Is it something that is worthwhile? And second, what do you think about the changes over the last 10, 15 years in competition for pattern? So that's where I was getting to with the question.
But I think with the patterns, I think they're necessary in the fact that it teaches the student the basic fundamentals, right? I mean, obviously somebody attacks you, you're not going to do a straight rising block, right? You can see that in sparring, but it's a good conditioning exercise. It's good to warm up, and it's an art. I mean, it's an art form. I mean, I tell my students when they do their patterns, you have to be the combination of a ballerina and a football player. You have to have the grace of a ballerina when you cross your arm to perform the technique, but at the end, it's got to be like you're breaking bones. I think it's our, the general, that was his foundation, right? And then we go from there. But I think it's very important. And we spend a lot of time in patterns with our students because it's, there's so many details. It takes a lifetime to perfect.
Yep.
With respect to competition, I am not a fan of the new scoring system. I am not a fan of all the tweaks and this. You know, you have the extreme people that go by the book. It's in the book. It's got to be like this. And then you have the other side, which is, you know, all the little tweaks here and tweaks there and standardization. I think it's micromanagement. I also think that the way they score competitors with the 0.2 deduction and this, I think is too much. I mean, I've from the last few world championships I've gone to, it just seems like the patterns are so robotic, so mechanical, so vanilla, so the same. There's no, no personality. There's no, you know, and if you go too sharp, then they're like, oh no, you're doing too much karate. If you don't do enough signing, or if you do too much signing, I'm like, I like the flag. You pass the eye test. I mean,
yeah, right.
that pattern looks better than that. Okay.
Yes.
A little punch lower, a little bit punch lower. Okay, it's not, you didn't freeze or make a full-blown mistake. You know, I'm not a fan on how they score the patterns. I think it's too micromanaged. It takes away, you know, it's almost like everybody starts with 100, and all they're doing, and I tell my students, you have 100. All they're doing is looking for mistakes, right? And then they're just going to click away. And I've heard competitors in the last tournament, because we use little clickers here. We don't have the electronic ones. And the one student says to her coach, all I hear is clicking.
Right.
And her pattern is good, but she's like, click, click, click.
Click. Yeah.
It's too much. I really think it's too much.
Yeah, there seems to be a kind of, you know, almost a celebration of the umpires that click more. There's a,
Right.
you know,
Well,
if you,
and at the World
more, then you're a good
Championships,
umpire. You know?
yeah, at the World Championships, you would have competitors in Finland that would make no major errors, right? And we you know, Master Young and I talked about this. No major errors, but they'd end up with zeros because they were clicking away so much that they would end up with the zero. So you might have another competitor that made one or two fairly egregious errors, but that's worth the same 0.02 that the person who didn't make any egregious errors made.
There's a perception about the properness of their sine wave that is a click every single technique.
Every time.
Because they're not doing the sine wave the way we're expecting it at this point. The subjectivity of pattern is so wrought with the individual's perception of what is correct. And you can see how they've tried to have the umpire committee and the technical committee come together more. You know, at our umpire course in Midlothian, they had Grandmaster Leclerc there to kind of, you know, talk about what they're expecting to see, and the more of the rhythm thing. Grandmaster Morano has talked about, you know, trying to have it not be a series of photographs, but this kind of flow and the energy. And for me, what you're talking about is that I want to see the energy. I want to see the competitive nature of the two people. You know, I want to see them there. I want to feel. Yeah. I want to feel who's got the energy, and then just you can make that decision. You know, even if there are some micro things, it's more about that win. Anyway, that's a good conversation. I'll let Master Fruitstone go ahead with his second question.
But
yes,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Please.
Are you in agreement with the single competitor at a time, or the side by side?
For me,
we always like side by side.
I can tell you, for me personally, I had a lot of concern about that idea. After the World Cup, we had people that said very positive things about it. They felt like that the better people advanced. I was talking to them, I had some conversations with other folks about it. And one of the ideas that we had was like, well, if you've got a huge pool of people and you need to get through the pool of people, like at the World Cup, you could do, everybody gets to go twice or 3 times, and you take the high and low scores out, and you take the top 8, and those top 8 could go head to head. And then you'd have that excitement of, you know, they're both on the floor at the same time. You're looking at them, and it requires, you know, the judges to be good. But the idea of the judge sitting there all day long and being consistent all day long and seeing the same issues and going just through one competitor at a time, it just seems like it's going to have more problems.
I am not a fan of it. I mean, take the fact that you have two competitors going side by side, and one of them forgets their pattern mid-pattern. The other competitor still has to have the mental fortitude to finish that pattern, knowing that the guy stopped and saying to himself, because it's happened to me,
Oh yeah.
saying, I just gotta finish, right? And then there are other events where you, like you said, you see a 0 and you're like, how can they score that person a 0 and this one a 2.2, whatever it is, out of 10, right? When that pattern was obviously much better. And if you're going to do one by one, just you're going back to open tournament days where you got your score, you tossed out the high, you tossed out the low, and just do the pattern once. Why do you got to do it every time if you're going to go one by one?
Right. Just do it.
Don't tell me it doesn't lengthen the tournament.
It does.
Oh, of course it does.
Oh, somebody, I think I had this conversation in New York. It only lengthens it by a minute here, a minute there. I said, it lengthens it though.
Sure.
And it's not the same side by side.
Right.
Yeah. My view on it is, like Master Young wants the head-to-heads at the end. My view on it is do it the other way around. All the elimination rounds are head-to-head. You're going to have that pool shrink. And then if you want to go one by one, if that's what you want, you can have the medal rounds be one by one, because we've got the apples and the apples, the top. And so you can judge them a little differently.
Right.
But in elimination pools, there's really no reason to have these one by ones, in my view. So
yeah, well, hopefully they'll come up with a different scheme. It's better. So moving on there, Master Fruitstone, go ahead. You got your next.
Yes, sir. So and this kind of segues, it's out of competition, more or less, but how has your personal perspective on the ITF as an organization changed over the years?
So I think it's gotten better. I mean, it's definitely moved to more democratic. I mean, obviously when the general was alive, there was no, the Congress was, the election was the way it was. And, there was less transparency in terms of, the bylaws, the Constitution, all that stuff. But in the same manner, we have what, 4 different logos now, 4 different ITFs, all with people that were from the original group. I saw it's hyper micromanaged at all. I mean, I think the committees are good to have, but I mean, when is too much? And I think we're at that point where we're at too much. And then when you have a dilemma to deal with, whether it be discipline, ethics, umpire, you have so much red tape to get through to. It feels like you're dealing with a typical politician in a country, and everything takes too long to get done.
Right. Sure.
Right. There's no decision maker anymore.
Yeah. So multiple take forever and a lot of discussion. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, I am not happy with it. I mean, obviously, I would say we are part of the problem because we are board members on a federation. But why did we become board members of the federation? Because we wanted to avoid, our predecessors' mistakes or behavior, so that I want ITF in the United States to be strong for my students, for my members, and to give us access to things like certificates, to tournaments, but not at their cost. Everything that we want for our members, everything that we can give them, they have to pay for it. It costs them something. And sometimes, I have a lot of students in my school, and I have kids that have lower economic and upper economic. And, Taekwondo should be for everybody. It shouldn't be just for the ones that can afford it. And I think they make it where it's very difficult. I mean, you have to get, for a school owner, it's not a big deal because we use it as, full-time school owners. It's not a big deal because we use it as a business expense, right? But most of the instructors in the United States have other jobs, right? You have to pay for a plaque, a certificate, this course. Then you have to go take this course. Now, luckily you have Zoom, so a lot of the courses you can take online, which facilitates that, lowers the expense for everyone. But when you didn't before, you had to fly. You have to leave your dojo, your family, all the expense that you had. And although we like it, we like to travel, gives us an excuse to travel. You have a World Cup one year, you have a World Championship the other year, you have an umpire course the other year, then you have another seminar here. I think, I don't want to use the word in a derogatory, but we exploit our students with all of these requirements, but not because we do. It's because the ITF above us requires it. So, I have students that don't want to test for their third Dan because now they got to get a plaque every year. And maybe next year they're going to be in college and they don't need the plaque. They're not going to teach. So yeah, I'm not the political part, I am a part of because I want to slow it down to where that affects all of our members.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance. And I know there's been a lot of discussion on the board level about membership fees and how do we have funds to help pay for certain things and to make the organization solvent and nonprofit, of course. But yeah, it's tricky.
For me to say to you, our membership is $100 a month. The first month's $125. $25 goes to ITF America. You're a member for life. You don't have to deal with it again. That kid quits today. He's a member forever. He comes back, he has to do it again. But your black belt that helps at your dojo, that go to everything, every year you got to send them an email. Here's your membership. You got to pay. Even if they don't go to anything, even if they want to be a national competitor. And I was trying to explain that you would generate more income like that. And obviously they will say, well, not if everybody, does, at least with the black belt, we can dangle their degree certificate in front if they get behind.
Right.
I said, yeah, but if school owners that have a lot of students, they would be happy to do it because it's much easier for them to collect it once in the beginning and not tag them every year for the same fee.
Yeah. That's
just my opinion. As a full-time school owner, as a business owner, and a person that's done it both ways, my high belts, they pay it, the annual membership, but I hate to charge it to them because some of them don't compete, some of them don't travel. They just train because they enjoy it. They've been with us for 20 or 30 years. They're not going to go to the World Championship. They're not going to go to umpire, but they pay it because out of loyalty, and I don't think that's fair to them.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation to continue, I guess, as this thing evolves. And it's interesting because, and Master Young and I have talked about this, ITF America is this really interesting animal, right? Where we've got these very different ideas and personalities, and you guys that have up at the top of the board, and you all have different experiences, and yet somehow, some way, you're able to have meetings and move forward. And not take it personally, which is good. Some of those meetings are heated, but they're productive. Something comes out of it, and progress still gets made. So I think we're kind of a work in progress, and it's still early, which definitely leads to Master Young's next question.
Okay, well, this is simply talking a little bit about the changes. We talk about loyalty a lot in Taekwondo, your loyalty to your instructor and loyalty to your organization, this type of thing. You were a member of ITF USA. It was I believe the first NA or NGB, I don't remember what the designation was at the time, but with this ITF, our particular ITF under Grandmaster Tron and then Grandmaster Trachtenberg after his passing. And you left that organization to join ITF America. After many years of discussion, I know. Would you be willing to speak about why you made that decision to change and how you see the organization going forward, ITF America?
Absolutely. So not only was the ITF USA the first NGB in the United States, it was formed in Philadelphia by us. Grandmaster Tran had set up a meeting with him and my father in the Philadelphia airport because he was in town, and he said, hey, this is what's happening. We want you to form this organization with a grandmaster from Texas called Grandmaster Van Bin, which at the time I didn't know him. And you would spearhead the organization for the new ITF after the general's passing. This was in 2003, right? So in a hotel, probably the hotel that your students stayed in when you came for the tournament, we held the first Congress. My father was the senior vice president, Grandmaster Van, because he was the senior in rank. Grandmaster Van Bin was the president. I think I was the secretary general, and I think Master Del Cid and Master Cancelliere were apart. And my father was always very apprehensive with the ITF because, you know, he was older than us. He had seen and gone through things with the USTF and ITF, and, you know, because before we had officially affiliated with the USTF, we were still in contact with Grandmaster Marano, and Grandmaster Marano would come to Philadelphia once a year to give a seminar and a black belt testing. And at some point there was some issues with the USTF because there were international masters traveling, etc. So that was our first delve into the politics part. We said, well, he's my instructor. Why can't he come? Well, the ITF, and that's how that started. Fast forward, you know, we started with the ITF USA. My father at some point resigned because he was not happy with the direction from the ITF, not so much from ITF USA because he was one of the senior vice presidents. He stepped away and you know, we continued. He wanted to remain, the USTC or our group to remain independent, and didn't want to put our students through all of the political requirements and that the ITF had, that USTF had at that time. Fast forward years into ITF USA, I think in 2013 we had a meeting as ITF USA with the then president, Grandmaster, rest in peace, Grandmaster Trachtenberg, where we had to present our case. We had a folder on how many plaques we had and all that stuff. And it was a good, strong foundation. And I remember, you know, having the meeting with him, and he's like, "Oh, this is very good. It's very impressive." You know. But it's overall, there was no determination there. He's like, "Well, you know, at the end, the cream will come to the top," kind of. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, really? So all this work we did to show you how many members the ITF USA had was for naught." So I was a little discouraged with that because I said, you know, this is a little bit deeper than just numbers. But we continued. And then at some point they had said, well, you know, at some point we want everybody to merge. We're going to remove the NAs. This was back in 2013. That discussion was already there. And we continued. You know, I stayed with the ITF USA board. And for the most part, we didn't have any issues because at that time we were still collaborating for the nationals. I didn't see any problem. I recall very, very clearly saying to board members from ITF, I don't care for the NA. Does it really matter? If you're the NA, you have to put together the nationals, which are money because we don't have enough people, and the IICs. And I said, what benefit is it to us? But other members thought there was more benefit. I said, as long as we all work together, ATFI, Original Taekwondo Federation, OTFA, and NTA all come together. We did national. Everything was fine until the ITF pushed that we merged. Correct. They pushed it. It wasn't because of, and as I remember, we said to them, we're happy the way we are. Everybody works independently. We just get together for 2 events. What's the big deal? Well, once we got together, you know what happened. Certain groups realized that they weren't going to have the numbers to keep the positions that they had, and that's when the problems occurred. And that's where Master Foley and I had issues with ITF USA, because we said, we want what's best for Taekwondo in this country, not for any individual. If I get voted off of a board, so be it. Less work for me. If somebody else gets voted on the board, so be it. If I don't like their policies, I can move on. I can leave. And they did not want to relinquish that position, and we fought them tooth and nail to the very end until at one point the board voted out Master Foley, obviously, because he is very well learned in corporate law. He's very well learned in procedure, and whatever they would try to pull, he let them know that that was not correct, to the point where they got their board members to outvote him. and remove him from the board. And at that point, I said, no, I really, this is not integrity. This is not for the best interest of the organization. You're only worried about your interest. I don't need to be a part of this. I'll take my group somewhere else, or I'll be independent. And that's when I said, I'll go with ITF America, because at least they have the humility to, what was very important to me is that those three groups decided to close their organizations to form one. And that showed me that their hearts were in the right place, that they wanted to do what was best. And I said, that's the group I want to go. You want to hold on to something that you can't hold on to. That doesn't belong to you. And only because there's a piece of paper that says you're the NA, that you're not in the best interest of the organization. And that's when we decided to leave. And I think it was the right decision. Definitely. I would have not, I don't have any regrets for that.
Any other thoughts that you might want to add about ITF America, or anything else about ITF Taekwondo? Feel free.
Yeah, I think that ITF America is on the right track. However, I think there needs to be some more progressive thinking members in the fact that, in the sense of thinking, what we did in the past didn't work, is the reason many of us left. If we go back to that same system, my idea of the federation is there to provide certificates and access to world championships. In the past, you needed a lot of technical instruction because the country was young. There were a lot of lower ranks. You had a lot of second and third degrees that didn't know Taekwondo well, didn't have experience. You don't have that anymore. You have 7th and 8th degrees all over the country. I mean, our conversation here is 3/8, Master of Fruits, 8th.
Yes, sir.
48 degrees. I mean, and we're relatively young, right? I don't think we need that technical oversight, especially when you have to do an IIC. You can literally do an IIC every year. I think that the federation's purpose should be to transmit paperwork, organize things like the World Championships, set the coaching staff, right, or the umpires, those things. But to be in the everyday management of dojangs and memberships, I think is an overreach, because I don't think it's necessary. It hasn't grown.
No.
Why? Because it's too difficult. It's too expensive. There's too many requirements. And people can have that elitist mindset. Oh yeah, but we're ITF. We have the best Taekwondo. Well, you may have the best Taekwondo, but they have the most students. So what do you want to have? I'm saying, I have students in my dojang that they go to a tournament, they'll lose in the first round. They're happy training in Taekwondo. They enjoy it. They're happy to doing an activity. And for them, it's not about the competitions, for the self-esteem or the fitness or the self-defense. Then I have the other students that are hardcore competitors, but they all train together. They're all one community. They're all happy. When the student that can barely remember his Chunji and is terrified to go to the tournament has a black belt that's a national competitor coaching them, there's a sense of family there. And I think that's what we need to build, and not build just this elitist think of it. We're ITF, we're better than everyone.
Yeah, that's great. That's
Thanks,
great.
sir.
Are you going to run for office next year? Because there's going to be an election.
For ITF America?
I don't think I've asked. I don't think I've put anyone else on the spot with that.
You have not asked anybody
I'm
so far.
sorry.
If I think I could make a change, I would love to.
I mean, I think the family dojang, we're talking about someone who's got a life dedicated to Taekwondo. We need your perspective on board. Even if other people don't agree, maybe you still have to work harder to convince. And, I mean, this is the nature of our democracy.
Right. Yeah, but you don't need to ask me. Ask my students, because I am at the point, prior, when the pandemic hit, my dojang was shut down completely.
Yeah.
We live in a democratic city where it was a risk to even stay open. We would teach some classes to some students that wanted to come in the basement. The streets were dead, barren.
Yeah.
I really question if, martial arts would survive that era. Many of my clubs under Red Tiger and USTC were in rec centers. They closed. Our instructors were there for many, many years. They were older. Like many people in the workforce, they decided I had enough. I'm retired. So I am left with mainly my school and one or two small satellite clubs. But when I tell you that my school is exploding at the seams, I used to teach one class at 6 and one class at 7:30. I'm teaching at classes at 4, 5, 6, 7:30.
Oh, that's good.
I removed my cardio kick program because I just don't have the time and energy to teach a class. And I've had to tell people, I said, I had to put you on a waiting list. I don't have room. And I have the facilities, but I don't have enough instructors to teach all the classes because everybody wants, the problems. Everybody wants to train at that certain hour. It's a good problem. Then I have another 20 or 30 that go to all the tournaments. Sometimes they go to Florida. And we support all the tournaments. We don't support just our ITF. I had a global Taekwondo Federation last Saturday.
Yeah,
this Saturday we have one in New York with another ITF. They support our event. We will support their event. And I post them. I don't say this is ours or which ones do you want to go to, and they will sign up to the ones they feel are of value. And I think that's what we need to provide to our members: value.
I talked to Master Fatagato when we were interviewing him, and I just mentioned, here's what the USTF was at the time that I kind of joined. When I became a member of the USTF, there was all these regional groups and everything. It seemed like things were firing on all cylinders. Why would we, how'd we end up where we are? And there is a good kind of roadmap for how not to go forward because it didn't work, right? So we have to be able to look back with respect to all of those instructors and the organizers of USTF, members of USTF. It's not being disrespectful. It's like trying to navigate the organization of martial art groups that have independent ideas and business models. It's hard.
But it's just like when you were raised by your parents, right? You were raised by your mom and dad, and they did the best they could. But there are certain things that they did that you probably wouldn't do with your kids, right? So you learn from this. Not that you are disrespecting them. You're just saying, okay, that's how you did it then because of the circumstances. Now the circumstances are a little bit different. Life is different. So we have to adapt a little bit different.
Yeah.
And planning my wedding. I had just come back from the World Championship in '99. I got engaged. And I didn't know, but you know who surprised me at my wedding? Showed up? Grandmaster Marcello.
Huh?
You know what I mean? He was there. And that it's important. And I always remember that. It's like when you went to a soccer game with your kids, you weren't the coach, but your kids know you're there. Right? How valuable is that to kids when they know mom and dad are there? Mom and dad may have not said anything, but they look around and the kids and our students are like our kids. I remember when I used to compete, I wanted my coach or instructor there. You want them there. Even if they don't say a word, it's almost like you feel, okay, I got somebody, I'm not alone.
If we can get more people, let them know what we're doing, then maybe more involvement, and it'll just work for the betterment, because we've been in a small pond, and we need to enlarge this pond if we want to keep this thing going.
And the candor that you guys have provided for us is super valuable. Because people get to see that you have different viewpoints and it works. And it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, sir, this has been a great conversation. Thank you. I'm gonna have to somehow pair our interview to get it within that 45-minute kind of zone. But thank you so much for taking the time to chat. It's always great to chat with you. And Master Fruitstone, of course, thank you for your time. And
of course.
Thank you, gentlemen. Always a pleasure.
This is all part of my Taekwondo family. It's very important to me.
Just make me sound better, okay?
Yeah, not the creepy uncle.
You
sound great.
Cut all the babbling part. Just cut out the good.
I will. I promise. You'll get it in a couple of days. I'll send it, and if you,
it's going to be a 3-minute video.
Even better. Bye.
A trailer.
That way I don't have any hate mail.
Well, Well, if we get a little bit of provoking, we're going to have to. I've gotten a little bit. I want to
Yeah.
get. I'm good. with
If
getting
you've
a
seen
little.
the other videos, they've been pretty candid.
Yeah, they've been.
Oh,
they've been
yeah?
oh yeah,
yeah.
check them out. You
I
can
haven't had it. I didn't see a Fatigados. I saw Grandmaster Nunes post it, but I didn't see the other one yet.
Yeah, this
We'll
one
get.
we've done.
We'll make sure I'll send
Nunez,
you the links.
Suarez.
All right.
All right, gentlemen.
All right.
Thank
Take.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
Bye bye.